Welcome to M&A Science, where we learn M&A from the best to continuously improve. If you're interested in keeping up with the latest from M&A Science, subscribe to our free newsletter at mascience.com. Every week, we share highlights from our interviews, invitations to events, M&A role openings, and other resources as we build the greatest community of forward-thinking M&A practitioners. Again, that's mascience.com. I'm your host, Kisan Patel, CEO and founder of M&A Science. Joining me today is David Hindley, Vice President, Corporate Development at Autodesk. Autodesk is a global leader in design and make technology with expertise across architecture, engineering, construction, design, manufacturing, media, education, and entertainment industries, traded on NASDAQ under ADSK. Today, we're going to talk about how the M&A function evolves. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. I'm looking forward to this. This is my first live stream, so I feel like I'm finally joining, some club that I should have been part
of. Well, thank you for taking a break from doing deals to have this conversation with me. One of the things I was I'm looking forward to the conversation. Can we kick things off with a little bit about your background?
Happy to. So I've been at Autodesk for almost 20 years. So, that part is kind of easy. Before I joined Autodesk, I started in the tech M&A banking industry in San Francisco. A little bit of the dot-com boom, which was a lot of fun as a junior person. Hey, this is really exciting. Things are going really well. And then a whole bunch of the dot-com bust, which was just awful and miserable and taught me that I don't want to be an investment banker for the rest of my life. So around 2003, I was lucky enough to find Autodesk right as we were standing up their initial corporate development function. I joined as an associate in the group and just kind of kept going and took over running the group about a year and a half ago or so. And it's been a great ride.
Wow. So start with a banking career, made the transition to corporate development, and went along this journey where you got to see that function get built out, mature, and then now to the point where you're leading it.
I go back and every once in a while I think, oh, maybe I should have switched or done something different, but I've just been very fortunate. Autodesk has been a terrific place to work. It's been a terrific place to grow a career, and it's just kept changing and evolving and kept keeping me engaged, interested, challenged, etc. So there's been a bunch of different phases, and right now I'm just in the latest one, and we'll see what's next.
I think that's what made me interested in have this conversation. I've seen a number of companies in the past years that are standing up an M&A function. You're seeing more and more companies do a pre-IPO. Now, essentially, it's like a prerequisite to go IPOs to have some kind of M&A function bubbling. Mm-hmm. But then what's ahead? Because when you talk to a lot of those practitioners, it's a lot of figuring things out as you go. There's not a real playbook on this stuff. And that's what I'm hoping to get out of you today. So maybe we can talk through your experience. How have you seen M&A function evolve over the years?
Yeah, definitely. Do you want me just to jump in and kind of talk about what I went through?
Sure. Yeah, let's start there, and I'll just pick your brain along the way.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I joined Autodesk when we were first building, an official corporate development function. So this was, like I said, 2003. We were a 20-year-old company at that point, and we had always been acquisitive. We've done lots of acquisitions, but they had been kind of informal or done by various people, or, there wasn't a formal function. So right before I joined, they decided to make the investment and hired a VP of Corp Dev and started building a team around it. So I was lucky enough to join then. The initial phase was very much around just kind of the internal investment banker type role, right? We weren't deciding what deals to do. We sort of had a voice, but maybe not really, right? It was much more just, hey, the strategy, the product teams, the executives, they want to do these deals. We're not going to hire bankers, just go and get them done, right? So we did a lot of that, and I got a lot more deal experience on that standpoint than, frankly, I had during my banking days. I did a handful of sell sides, in the banking days, but and a handful of buy sides, but there was a lot of downtime in the dot-com bust, right? So a lot of pitching. I got very good Excel, PowerPoint skills at the time. They're pretty rusty now, but I built them out and put them to use just doing a whole bunch of acquisitions. So the kind of first phase of my experience was just lots of deals, right? Learning how you get a deal done internally in a corporate environment versus a banking environment, learning how the company works and how you push things to resolution and to conclusion. learning about the culture of Autodesk and how you lead through indirect authority and influence and those sorts of things. And, because I didn't have anybody working for me, but I had to try and get all these people to due diligence and sign up on stuff and, create slides and get the deal done. So there was a lot of that, and just learning to partner really closely, right? And kind of learning what works, what doesn't work from, an execution standpoint. So that was kind of phase one for, a few years, more or less.
So phase one, a lot of the transitioning from the banking and the experience, could you help me clarify what did you see as the difference between banking in sort of deals experience as a banker versus a corporate development?
The whole reason I wanted to make the shift, which is I think what a lot of people do, is, hey, you want to be part of the decision making. You want to take away the inherent conflict of interest of getting a commission on whether you do the deal or not. And frankly, I wanted to be at a company long enough to see if my suggestions or ideas panned out and were successful or not, right? Like I wanted to see if, hey, I could live or die by the deals that I recommended. And it hasn't gone exactly that way, but that's the approach I've taken, right? Like, hey, if I'm advocating for deals that we do and they all suck and destroy value, maybe I should go find a different career. So luckily it hasn't turned out that way, but that was the different mindset, right? Like going from, hey, I'm just trying to get a deal done and move on to the next one. And I know not all bankers do that, and I'm not accusing them of that, but that's kind of the business model, to, hey, I want to be part of the long tail here, right? I want to be part of the whole tail, frankly, the pre-tail, all the strategy stuff, the evaluation, the exploring different targets, the conversations and all those sorts of things. And then the long tail around the integration and actually achieving value and all those sorts of things. So that was what drove, attracted me to the buy side overall, and that's a large reason of why Autodesk has been a good spot for me for the last 20 years.
And you said a part of that was learning to lead through authority.
Indirect authority, yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Just the how do you influence people to help you out and do what you want to do, especially where that's not necessarily part of their day job. I mean, it's a constant battle. I'm sure there are Corp Dev folks here that understand this. Well, this isn't part of my day job. This is incremental, and trying to convince people that this. We've been doing deals for 20 years. We've done them for the last 10. You've been part of lots. It's part of your day job at this point, dude. Like this is how we do things. So that's a piece of it, but more importantly, just build. And this is kind of an Autodesk specific thing. I mean, I'm sure it's part of every company, right? But we're not one of the super top-down driven companies where the CEO, the chairman, or the private equity owner say, "Go do this deal," and everybody just gets in line. It's an old school company that it's got lots of matrices and those sorts of things. And so trying to figure out how you navigate the intricacies and get stuff done, and convince people that it's in the best of everyone's interest, and be empathetic to what their issues are or concerns are, and how can you help them get their job done to ultimately get the right outcome for the business. So that was that learning process, which was it kind of fit well with my personality, which probably why I stuck around. People come in and they're used to that sort of command and control approach, and doesn't fit that well within Autodesk. They tend to not last too long. So
very cool. What was the volume of deals you were doing in the early years?
We went on a bit of a tear. So, I think the max we did in that time frame was 12 or 15 deals in a year. Now that included some very small acquisitions, some IP purchases type stuff. But there was a lot of deals, and that we had. It was a large. It wasn't just me. There was a person running the group. There were a handful of directors. There were some other junior people. We had. It was a proper team. But I think we did 12 or 15 deals in one of those years, like 2007 or 8 or something like that.
I know in a prior conversation, we were breaking this down into phases, and this sounds like the one you described, phase one of acting like a bank.
Yeah.
When you're essentially really building the mechanics to do essentially what the bank does in-house.
Yeah, that was it. And as a junior person, I was still kind of a deal junkie at that point. So it was a ton of fun. We were doing deals all over the world, and getting to travel a bit. And my wife still makes fun of me. We were doing a deal with a company, had 2 offices, one in France and one in Poland. And I told her, I'm going to Poland. And then like right as I walked out the door, I mean, actually, I'm going to France. And ever since then, she's been, would you work for the CIA? What's going on? Like, what are you doing? So yeah, it was great as a more junior person.
What did the next phase look like?
That was really cleaning up all the mess that we bought, right? It was building an integration practice to support all this stuff and figure out how we actually get value. The deal guys buy value, the integration people, I shouldn't say guys, the deal people buy value, the integration people create value. And I know some deal people, they just can't be bothered. They have no passion. They don't care about it. And that's fine. For me, I always viewed it as part of what I wanted to do, right? So during that phase, I spent a little time running the group while someone was on an extended leave. And so I got pretty in-depth exposure to what was going on. I was part of the initial building out of functional playbooks and building the team. We did a larger acquisition, a company called Alias. It was bigger for us. I forget, I think it was 60 or 80 million in revenue. At the time, we were less than $1 billion. Not a huge deal, but it was, kind of like a decent size deal. But we did a full integration on it. We defined playbooks. We got consultants to come in and help us write everything out and make it an official process. So that was kind of phase two, like building out the integration function in connection with the execution side of the group.
How far into building this M&A function do you start getting to that point when there's a clear realization we got to rethink how we integrate companies?
It was pretty soon. I mean, it was definitely not like a sequential process. There was a lot of overlap. It was things were going on in parallel. I mean, it's kind of obvious but it's also, you don't know what you don't know when you get into it, right? So, you kind of think integration, we sort of started with the IT people, I think. And then, we kind of realized that, this finance stuff is pretty hard too. We should probably get someone in finance, and the HR stuff is difficult. So we had to convince the HR team to, hire someone to be full-time and, support all these things. And you kind of start at level one or, beginning level, like what's the bare minimum we need to do? We just kind of need to keep the wheels on and keep the lights on, et cetera. And then, over time you evolve it. Like, hey, this isn't good enough. We can be better here. We can do more things and, culture integration or those sorts of things. Right. So, it's easy to recognize the need. It's hard it's a lot harder to build out the support and the teams and the capacity.
I take it that's something that also evolves over time.
I mean, I've been spending, since I took over the group, I've been spending more time on integration than on the deal side than I ever have in the past, right? So, and it's important, and it's something I'll work on. I mean, I'm probably swinging the pendulum a little bit too far right now, but I'll go back eventually. And we're trying to do some stuff to up level where we are and to make some bigger improvements that we think will position us for more success longer term. And it just needs some care and feeding.
When you look at the overall M&A function, you have this first phase with the building out the capabilities essentially of a bank. Second phase, building out your integration muscle. What's after that?
The next phase for us was really getting kind of going back to the first piece and moving beyond just executing the deals that we were told to, right? And it's forming a thesis or a strategy of your own, trying to advocate for it, going out and meeting companies and having a position and a point of view and kind of pounding the table and say, hey, here's what we should do. We think this makes sense, and not just relying on other people to make those decisions. And we don't have strategy in our title, and so we're kind of explicit about that. Like, we're not in charge of this, but we think we have a voice that and a point of view that's relevant and should be part of the discussion. And so it was really building out that. And the impetus for a lot of that for us was our expansions beyond kind of the core work that we had always done and the core industries and customers we served. And as we started to explore mobile and even some social stuff, we had some consumer stuff for a while. We had these areas where there's deep expertise inside Autodesk around what we do. I'm never going to out-domain some of these people on what they've been doing for 35 years. But they may not know that much about mobile at the time. For example, they've been doing desktop stuff for for all that time. And so it provided an opportunity for us to get out and spread our elbows a bit. And that was another one of these evolutions that I talked about. It just made the whole it kept me interested and engaged and excited. And so that was kind of phase 3 is building on what we had done to try and provide more strategic insight and value up front, and to be more of an external voice internally, to turn the mirror on Autodesk and say, hey, here's what we say, but like, let's look at it practically. Like maybe we're not quite as we could be more critical of ourselves to make ourselves better, basically. So building that muscle.
Yeah, like it's some kind of like strategic vision that you're expanding on or helping amplify, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to take an external viewpoint that maybe other people inside Autodesk won't easily access, right? So we're talking to lots of startups, we're talking to investors, we're talking to bankers, we're talking to to competitors, maybe potentially more, right? So it's another angle to bring on the problem you're looking at.
Okay, I wrote down amplify/expand strategic views.
Yeah, perfect.
What's phase 4?
Well, I think for me, phase 4 was, taking over the group and kind of growing into leadership and getting beyond that sort of stuff. I think that the real thing we're working on phase 4 is this kind of next evolution of the integration function that we're talking about. So kind of bounce back and forth between deal side integration, but that's been taking up a ton of my time for the last several months plus, around we've got the basics, we've got the foundation, but we're not getting all the results and the impact and the benefits that we can. So how do we connect these things more effectively and drive more value out of the deals that we're doing sooner and more, with more confidence.
Connect the gears.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in this because you've seen it. You've been part of this M&A function, and you've seen it from different angles. You've progressed your career within this function. And I get the opportunity to lead it. What were those big initiatives that you had?
Well, we're still a company, and I still have a boss, and so I had big visions around building a bigger pipeline, and we're a $5 billion company roughly now. We need to be a $10 billion company. How are we going to get up there? And the executives are like, yes, that's great. But hey, first fix this integration stuff, and then we're going to build on that stuff. So, it's a bit of both, but my big things were building on all the stuff that we've done, the work around, being an effective team, getting deals done, knowing how to do at least the basics of integration, having a strategic viewpoint to try and make a bigger impact on the company, right? So I have a shadow pipeline of my own where, I've got deals that I think we should do and, that have bigger revenue and that, frankly, some of the executives may totally disagree with, but I'm going to keep them on my list and, take the opportunity to make pitches, et cetera. So, those are some of the big things. And then really ultimately now I have no excuse for why we're not driving the right value through integration. There's no one preventing me from, taking the right things to CEO staff or to whatever executive I need to and say, here's what I think we should do. At the end of the day, I might not be able to tell them what to do, but at least I made my point in my pitch. And if they decide to do something else for competing business reasons or whatever, I can at least stand by the fact that I'm doing everything I can to try and drive the most success from these deals.
This is phase 4. This is kind of where we're at. How has the strategy evolved over time?
I think that it has, at the end of the day, in my mind, there's not, people think of strategy sometimes, or at least maybe when I was more junior, I thought of this as this scary thing. Like, how do you do strategy? It's kind of like wizardry or sorcery. Like, do you pixie dust and how do you make it work? And the more I've done it, the more I've been just dumbing it down and making it simpler and simpler. Right. So, the mindset I take with any sort of strategic document that I'm working on with my team or a pitch or whatever it is you shouldn't have to be a PhD in these things for it to make sense, right? Like our board of directors, they meet 4 or 6 times a year. They know our business, but they're not PhDs in our business. if they can't understand it, like we're doing something wrong. So that's maybe more of a personal thing, but just it should really just be common sense. It shouldn't be that difficult. And I mean, unless you're doing, landing rockets on Mars or whatever, for most of the stuff we do, it should be kind of straightforward and basic. So that's kind of like the personal evolution we've seen. The other thing we've seen is just, companies used to, in our space at least, they used to be much more in their wheels, spheres of influence, and we've just seen much more blurring of the lines. So we've had to really expand the way we look at strategy across, industry participants and competitors, et cetera, around, how people could enter, exit, compete, play. And so it's been, it's more interesting, it's more fun. It's just, it can get more complicated, and, you have to keep a lot more company names in your mind than I had to 15 years ago.
You got a method for doing that? I feel like that's a whole task of its own.
No, there's no secret sauce for that. I take a lot of notes, and then I try to, spend some time every day to keep them a little bit organized, and put them somewhere where I can find them in the future. Because if I don't write it down, it doesn't exist. So I don't have a perfect answer for that. I do spend as much time as I can, getting ahead of what I need to do in the future. So just getting organized, like start the year. What are the things I need to do this year? What are the big rocks? And, it's not just goal setting, but it's more like, am I looking at the most impactful thing, and trying to stay organized. And I had a person on my team recently say, "Oh, you're very organized. It's very great." And I was like, "Oh, that's a huge compliment." So I was pleased that came through, because in my mind, I feel very disorganized. So if I can at least, show that I can remember stuff and be organized, that's great.
Do you like score opportunities, or keep them in some kind of like descending list of priority?
So yes, there's always kind of like tiers, like, A, B, C, or, high, medium, low, or whatever. We're also trying to build a bit more quantitative aspect into it. So we've been kind of doing scorecards and charting things based on different criteria, strategic versus financial stuff, and seeing how they plot. And it's not the criteria is kind of subjective going in, so it's not like deterministic tool that this is the number one deal. But if you pick the right criteria, and it's not too many pieces, you can compare deals just much more effectively. And things like, hey, is it the most important strategic thing? Is it, how difficult will it be to integrate? Is the business model consistent? Can we drive high synergies or not? Some of those sorts of things. And then it gives you a framework to compare the company. So, you could do it with Harvey balls. We've been putting stuff on charts lately, and kind of, plotting them on an X versus Y type thing. But yes, we do. And it's a tool to use. It's not, like I said, deterministic. It's not the answer, but it can help facilitate the right conversations if they're done right.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's breaking it down into some key characteristics so you can actually compare deals with each other, and maybe that helps to prioritize as well.
It's all about the conversation and the thinking, and trying to force people to think about things with some level of consistency. I mean, every deal has their unique pieces, but they also have some of the same aspects, right? So, trying to have some level of comparing apples and apples, even though, we're not just doing that.
And, thinking back to the organization's pretty early in standing up an M&A function, is there anything you can do to speed up the evolution for efficiencies?
I think that so no, I probably don't have a silver bullet there, other than, having executives that really care about it, right? And that was one of we always had executives that cared, right? But one thing you don't appreciate, or I didn't appreciate as a junior person in M&A function, is the executives have 50 things to worry about, right? And so I think M&A and deals and strategy all the time. They might think 50 different things every day, and so you can't expect them to come with the same level of attention to detail and care, and you have to help get them there, right? So I do think that having an executive that buys in, is looking for leadership, and that you can help tell them how to support you to move it quickly. That's that's something that probably could have moved us a bit quicker in some of the areas. But but you're also just, people tend to not be able to choose their executives. So, you might not be able to influence that too much.
Fair enough. Is there anything else that could be a potential thing?
Just, yeah, practice, be critical on yourself and the function, don't hide the ball on, or sugarcoat everything around how things are going. Be accountable to yourself, drive accountability with the other leads. I mean, standing up functional leads quickly. I mean, that was something we did. So, I mean, there's the nuts and bolts that you have to do. Like we were very slow and ineffective before we got functional leads in the right functions that we could have go-to people. It started as designated people. You go talk to Brett in finance, he'll help you out. But then eventually Brett becomes a full-time person, and then eventually they get some people underneath them, and then you start to build scale and repeatability, and you're not kind of starting from scratch. So yes, like that was a very a very helpful piece. On the big deal, using the big deal as an opportunity to actually define playbooks and forcing people to actually go and document a playbook. Like lots of people would say, oh, we've got our playbook. And I said, great, show it to me. And they said, well, it's kind of in my email and it's in my head. And it's like, no. Like everyone's going to have a playbook. It's going to have these 5 chapters or pieces or whatever it is. And then everyone can see them, and people can start to understand, oh, HR is doing that. Well, the finance better need to think about doing this at the same time. And you start to build that piece of it. So those were 2 very important pieces, I would say.
Yeah, it seems like those are the key parts, like building your muscle for diligence and then integration. When you mentioned even early on the challenge of working with the functional leads, getting their attention for it, was there any approach that worked well? Did you kind of emphasize the importance? Like, look, we're dropping, $80 million for this company, kind of a big deal. How'd you have to go about that?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to learn each person and how the best way to interact with them is. I mean, it kind of helped as I was a junior person at the time, and so I would kind of go in and it was kind of my demeanor anyway. I would just go in and be open and transparent and maybe vulnerable and say, we need to get this thing done. Help me. Like you're the person. Like how else can we do it? It's important and those sorts of things and more appeal to hey, we need to get this thing done, let's try and do it effectively. And yeah, for sure you have to highlight the importance of the business, or highlight that, hey, the CEO staff has a review on this date, we need this input by then, so get it to us and have it make sense type thing. And one thing I probably did too much is just do other people's work. So I didn't do finance diligence, but when it came to presentations or reporting, you just wind up doing some of that on your for sake of expediency, right? And that's probably a skill, or not a skill, but something I did too much of when I was junior, and I'm trying to break that habit and hold people accountable to do what they need to do and just report on it as opposed to get it right all the time.
Was there anything that you did in terms of getting the functions sort of aligned together so they're functioning more cohesively as a team as opposed to just independent resources?
So yeah, I mean, we do offsites, we try to do events, we try to get people to talk about things that are other than M&A, and just build some empathy and some group cohesion. We try to bring them on board that, hey, we're kind of on a mission or a quest to do this piece, and we need everyone's support to do it. And whether you're doing the accounting integration or the technical integration or the revenue, whatever it is, we're all part of making this successful, and we should feel joint accountability for the overall success of the transaction. And we try to report and try to connect what they're doing with those value drivers and success metrics explicitly. It's not easy. And not all functions want to hear it all the time, but yeah, we do those things. We are trying to cultivate there's a big group of people that do this work, and that's great. We're also trying to kind of cultivate, hey, who are the key stakeholders that we can start to elevate and get them to think about things more strategically, get them out of the weeds of the integration project management, and get more strategic around the decisions we're making, the issues we're seeing, making things better, because ultimately I think that will provide you have better results, but it'll provide better engagement and, work satisfaction and intrinsic motivation and all those sorts of things. So yeah, we definitely do it explicitly. We're okay. If anyone has great ideas, please send them to me.
I mean, that sounds key in terms of building the integration muscle. And it sounds like this stuff is all initiative through Corp Dev, like those offsites and things like that. You're actually driving those events.
Yeah. So we're balancing the getting input from everyone on what I mean. Take a step back. Everyone wants it, right? Like, but lots of people, when I came into the role, lots of people said, hey, we need to do this. And so we've done them in the past. So it's been on our radar for a while. We're not dragging people there kicking and screaming. And then we're balancing getting input from people. What do you want to accomplish? What are the needs that you see that we have versus some of the stuff that we know is important and that we need to get done. And, and it's the beginning of a conversation, not the end. So, there'll be regular pieces and there's regular interaction and team building and all that sort of stuff.
How many different business units do you have?
Well, the way we're set up, we have really 4 kind of product groups, in industry groups. It's AEC, architecture, engineering, and construction. It's manufacturing. It's media and entertainment. So that's film, visual effects, animation, Pixar movies, those sorts of things. And then we have a platform kind of product technology team that does a lot of like research and forward looking stuff as well. So those are just product strategy, marketing. They do not have sales. We have one central sales team for everyone. So they're not really business groups the way some other companies might view them. But those are the 4 industries that we serve. And then on the deal side in particular, we partner with as they grow their strategies and identify targets, and we're intimately involved in that whole process.
But then when you started, were there 4 groups or were there less than 4 groups?
Oh, I can't even remember. I think at the time there might have been 5 because we had MSD, ISD, AEC. Wasn't AEC though? It was called something. BSD. Maybe a couple of others we had discrete. So yeah, maybe there were 5 at the time, and they've kind of like merged and changed and split apart and been kind of different things over the years that we've had.
That's fun stuff that happens. That's a whole other story. And what I'm trying to get a sense is how your Corp Dev function is structured today, because like you have your Corp Dev team, which is roughly how many people?
I've got on the deal side, I've got 2 directors and 2 associates. So it's not a big team. And
that's good.
A couple people on the integration side.
We like nimble teams here at M&A Science. They're the ones that do the best deals. And then you have a dedicated integration team, or no?
Yeah, of 2 people. So the structure we have is a business partner. On the deal side, it's a business partner approach. So each industry group, they have business partners, whether it's finance, HR, legal, that are part of the executive staff. They're part of every conversation. They're not just lawyers or finance people that talk about that. They're part of the executive staff for that industry group. And so each industry group has a Corp Dev person that's on there and that participates fully in that. So that's where strategies, the initial strategy discussions happen. There's lots of other places they happen. That's where the industry groups are reviewing their pipelines, helping to prioritize, getting input from the product teams and strategy teams and other folks around, hey, what's most important for this industry? And then we as a team kind of view that collectively across all the industries and make it work. So that's the approach we have. It's different than what it was when I came on. When I came on, like I said, we were kind of the internal banks. We were the example we use is short order cook, right? We're the short order cook, throw it up there, we'll cook it up and put it back up on the shelf. And now we're trying to farm to table, right? Hey, we're part of the initial conversations. We're all the way through to the end, and even beyond whatever comes after farm to table.
And then there's a Corp Dev resource in the BU.
Yeah. I mean, they're dotted line into the BU. Basically, they report to me directly, but they report dotted line into those people. Those are the people that give most of the review information. They join all the staff meetings. They go to the offsites. They do all that stuff.
What drove why'd that happen? Because this is interesting, because it's like I said, they're all structured different. So
Yeah. The well, it's an evolution. So when I joined, there were people in the divisions that were called business development. They didn't really do business development. They basically did corp dev, but they only did the upfront strategy, target identification, and that was it. And then corp dev did everything past then. We did, the valuation, the negotiation, the term sheet, the diligence. We did all that stuff, right? And then that relationship was not super helpful or functional. It was a legacy of something that was before my time. So I came into this environment, and then ultimately, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, we combined those. So I think a bunch of people had left, and they made the decision, they combined those, but then they centralized them under Corp Dev with this kind of business partner model. So that was how we got there. And frankly, this approach, definitely caused strife, right? Because these people in the business units sometimes want to do stupid deals, right? And we're trying to say, this deal doesn't make any sense. Like we shouldn't do it. We're overpaying. It's not going to do what we want to do. But at the end of the day, we were there to be the bank. So, we got in line, right? But now it's much better. We have the end of the day, we're not the ultimate decider. We have a strong voice. The executives want to do a deal, we're going to go help them get the deal done. But we have a much stronger voice in this scenario, and bigger seat at the table and stake in the conversation.
what about the accountability at the corp dev person in the B unit? Are they still kind of running it through close and handoff, or are they involved with integration to sort of see through that part?
They're involved. I would say that the expertise and history of both of the folks that I have in those roles right now is more on the deal side and getting to close. We bring the integration team in very early. They're part of all of the diligence conversations. They start interacting with the BU or the division execs, even right when we kind of get to a term sheet, even before, to start thinking about what are the big rocks, what do we need to be focused on, and then ultimately the evolution that we're kind of working on is that becomes a slow transition. It's not this hard and fast, hey, the deal's done, integration's off and running. Like the deal side is focused during the early phase of diligence, et cetera, and the integration people have a smaller impact, and then that kind of grows over time. You get to close and you're kind of ready to go. So and lots of what the deal folks appreciate, that at Autodesk, it's not just about getting the deal done. We care about the decisions that are made. We care about the assumptions that are made. The product and go-to-market integration decisions impact the revenue plan, which impacts the success metrics, which impacts what everybody cares about. So, it's very much a group effort. But the deal folks do tend to drop off, a little bit after close and go working on the next deal. They do still stay involved in some of the reporting and connected to it, but not in the day-to-day of integration.
Then keeping those integration folks in the loop about the decisions and really part of that deal early on, so they're part of the mission. Are there any secrets to doing that? Let them in the room.
Include them on the invites, get them in there. The thing that we're really doing is getting our leads, and most importantly, I have a new person that's running integration for us. He joined maybe 6 months ago at this point, and getting him to embrace. And what I'm telling him is, hey, our vision should be, the integration is a strategic advisor to the executive around what they want to accomplish, right? This is not a reactive kind of passive activity. It is a forward leaning and strategic advisor role to the executives. If you want to achieve this, here are the things you should do. Here are the things you shouldn't do. Here are the issues that you should be worried about. Driving, being proactive, being directive with the teams around, these are our standards. You have to hit our standards. If you can't, we're going to talk to the executives and confirm why, and we're either going to say yes or no. And so just being much more directive and proactive. And so that is bringing it back to your initial question, my view is, it's also up to the integration leader to some extent to, force himself to be relevant and force his way in there, and, force decisions to be made early. Because I do think that one of the worst things you can do with an integration is just keep delaying and say, we can't talk about this. We got to sign. We can't talk about this. We've got to close. We can't talk about this. We've got to, get this first thing done, right? You have to have the conversations early, and someone I admire made a statement that I really like. It's like, I can fix a bad decision. I can't fix no decision, right? So just make a freaking decision, and then we can move forward, right? So that's a lot of what we're trying to do.
That's the whole thing of its own, is that with all this integration stuff, it's a huge volume of decisions that need to be made. Is there an approach to it? Is there a framework that you agree on, or is it just something that becomes part of the culture in terms of handling that to be better at integration?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that yet. And that's one of the things I'm tasking my team on. It was just like, I don't want 1,500 line smart sheet. Like, that's not useful for me at all. And frankly, I don't think it's useful for anybody. Maybe somebody somewhere has to confirm that all this stuff gets done. We need a framework to talk about things at a level that makes sense to executives, right? And maybe kind of back to the strategy piece I discussed. Like, if it doesn't make sense, if you can't look at this and understand what's going on, then we're looking at it in the wrong way. So, we're trying to up level our, the way we talk about integration and the decisions that need to get made in a way that is more intelligible and can't just be, this 900 line thing of stuff that, takes 2 hours to go through. What are the big rocks? We have to rely on some of the functional people to just execute the job below that can, know the right thing to do once we set the higher direction. So that's what we're trying to get to. It's a work in progress. We're not there yet. But we're moving the needle.
OKRs. Have you heard of OKRs?
Yeah, I've heard of them. That's part of it for sure. Trying to balance the desire of folks to, make sure they have every I dotted and T crossed versus, OKRs, bigger objectives, big rocks, what are the key decisions? And this is where I think the creativity and the strategic advisor piece of integration can come in, is what are the big rocks that we should care about with this deal based on what we know about the company, what we know about the buyer, what we know about what it takes to integrate, what are the things that we should be most focused on, and pushing those forward. So, to me, it's a lot more fun because you're having real conversations. You're not having conversations around, we're 79% done. 79% of what? Of everything? of something less? Of 1,000? Of what? So I care about, is the channel activated? Is quote to collect integrated? That sort of, how do we get at that kind of level in a way that's more useful to execs, at least.
It rings well on a very small scale. Is what I'm working on internally, is like bridging OKRs to the actual task, so you can follow the chain all the way through, and then you can jump in the middle where you need to, and click down when you need to. Can we talk about governance? I'm curious how you've seen the governance model evolve over time.
Yes, we've seen it.
Well, and we got different layers of governance, I guess, right? Because we got overall, no go decisions to sort of, are we creating steering committees for these deals and things like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've bounced back and forth, right? We've had, M&A committees, which are kind of subsets of CEO staff and a few other people. We've had it. Everything is the executive sponsor, and they do everything, and they're the decider. There's trade-offs with everything you do. I would say that what we're focused on now are, setting up the right kind of steering committee that can, provide governance, inspection, decision making without, being a ton of bureaucracy, right? And making sure that we have the right people there. I think for and for the right deals, right? Like, some deals, I'm just going to say, this thing doesn't need a steering committee. It's too small, and it's not, there's not going to be enough to talk about every month, right? So we're just not going to do it. But if it's important enough to do, everyone needs to make a commitment, and that's where we're going to drive the accountability, and making sure we have the right folks there. So I think we're doing okay on that. It's better than sending out dashboards that are out of date and unintelligible, or where you can't really tell what's going on. So we're forcing people to have the conversation and building the expectation that, hey, this is going to be the nexus of accountability for these deals. So that's what we're doing now. And like I said, I think we've been early signs of success. We don't have the full playbook kind of built out, but I think it's best practice, and I think you need to have some kind of written down governance that people can rely on and become accustomed to. So that's what we're doing now.
And it evolves and changes. Do success metrics change, or are they very much derived based on the deal itself? Do you or sort of think of like a general framework overall?
I mean, we generally have the kind of probably the standard ones that most folks have, some sort of top line, some sort of, customer or go to market type thing, some product type goals, people goals, integration goals, et cetera. Right. So those are kind of the main buckets that we'll look at, and then we'll pick and choose based on what's relevant. What we're trying to get to now, and this is one of the evolutions we're working on, is making them less of a report card that comes out at the end of the quarter, where you get to see, oh, was I red or yellow or green? And, then you have arguments around, is 89% red or is it yellow or whatever. And by the time everyone sees it, it's kind of out of date, and, everyone sort of knows about it anyway. And, making the steering committees the place where things are really, where people are really looking at the tracking of the efforts, whatever it is, whether it's top line or product or whatever's most important. And more importantly, the forecast, and are we on track, right? So when do we, having the time to make decisions that can impact their trajectory versus just saying like, did we do well or not, right? So we'll always have some element of the kind of backward looking, hey, we gotta say how we did last quarter, but there's not that much you can do with that except, either pat people on the back or make them feel bad. I'm much more interested in the conversations that have a view on the forecast and what we can do going forward. So we're trying to make them more forward and backward looking, to drive the right kind of conversations. And it's been sort of the same as the steering committees. They've been we're seeing success so far. We're not done, but we've seen it driving the right kind of behavior and engagement with folks, which is really kind of the biggest thing I was looking to achieve.
It's like a whole topic to unpack of its own.
Uh-huh.
When we look at these opportunities to improve as you go, and it's interesting how you're very candid about there's still things in the works. You're still learning and you're still improving. And I turn around and talk to somebody at Cisco with 200 plus deals and still the same narrative. They're still improving, still working on it. Have you identified any approaches or methods to help with the retention of learnings deal by deal to be able to build off of those things?
We do postmortems. We try to share everything with the teams. We're getting back to documenting playbooks and trying to have more stuff documented that we can then go back and look and say, did we change this? Did we do what we say we were going to do? Are we on track or not? Some of those sorts of things, but no, I probably don't have a silver bullet for, here's how you get every learning baked into what you do. Some of it comes down to just pattern recognition and being part of these things for over years and being able to raise your hand and maybe have an uncomfortable conversation that, hey, I think we're doing the wrong thing here, or we're on the wrong track, or we really need to think about what's doing this a different way, right? So I do advocate for my team, and I try to model this behavior of throwing ourselves in front of the train. The deals can take on a momentum of their own, and so can the integration plans, and so can other pieces. And if we don't raise a voice or make a point, maybe no one else will, right? So trying to do that and bring that forward and make that part of what everyone feels comfortable doing. Not everyone has access to the brake handle on the train, but at least you can try to have an impact.
You keep a lot of dialogue going, have the tough conversations, and that's probably one of the key things.
Yeah,
it's definitely a tough one, because even if you document a bunch of things, it's how do you get people to look at the documentation?
Yeah, and then people leave, and you get someone else coming in, and you have it is tough, and so we'll do the best we can.
How about
maybe?
How about the hiring process? How has that evolved? I can imagine the standard is you start off hiring ex-bankers de facto. Is that still what you're doing today in 2023?
I haven't hired anyone yet this year, but we'll see. Hopefully I will. Yeah. For the junior people, we still do look at that, right? The experience you get as as a a junior banker, as an analyst or an associate, around just the stuff that we need to be able to do, models and comps and company comparisons and decks and all those sorts of things. It's we've hired people that don't come from the core M&A banking people in background, and you can train some of that stuff. But anyway, it's just it's hard to be. It's a steep learning curve if you have none of that experience, and especially given that most analysts do 2 years of work more or less in the year they're there. So they're well trained. So we tend to focus on that. I'm less worried about that for the the more senior people. They need to be able to interact with director or with executives, operate with indirect authority and ambiguity. They need to be able to handle. Those are kind of the skills that they need to be able to handle. They need to be an effective advocate and ambassador for Autodesk externally to different folks. So those are the things that are more important. But for now, both of my deal directors are ex-bankers, so that's where it is.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how that evolves. One day you get like an AI bot that you're like, hey, build this model out for me, and then poof. On the other areas like integration, how does that fit in? Is that trying to be as intrinsic as possible, getting folks internally that really know the business, or are you pulling people from consulting firms, or just hiring consultants?
Look, I mean, we do use consultants from time to time, certainly in some of the functions in particular. And we like across the integration team more broadly at Autodesk, we have a mix. We have some people that just grew up in Autodesk and they're functional expert, and now this is what they do. We have some people that have done this at other companies. They've hopped around, and so they're more of a an integration or an M&A expert. And there's pluses and minuses to both of those pieces. The skill I'm trying to hire for now is kind of what I talked about. Like, you need to embrace this strategic advisor, kind of concierge mindset to the executive, right? Like, your job is to help shepherd this thing from A to B and to help lead the team to help them, right? Like, some integration functions come in and say, well, here's the checklist, tell us when you're done. And if you're not on track, we'll report you as red, right? And that's not what we're looking for. What the teams need to come say, here's where you need to get to, here's where you are, and here's the roadmap to do that. And we're going to help you. We're not going to do all your work. We're not going to solve every problem for you, but we are not going to let you spin. We're not going to force you to chase your tail around. We're not going to, you're going to know what's going on, and we'll escalate when we have stuff that we need to talk about. So embracing that, the strategic advisor mindset, and that kind of, I call it concierge mindset, but it's like hey, we're going to help you get there. We're not going to solve all your problems, but we're going to make it explicit so that you're not wondering what's going on, and we'll get decisions more quickly. That's the hope.
What would that title be?
Say again?
What would the title be for that role?
Well, I mean, that's
describing the function.
So I mean, in my mind, that's an integration lead, right? That's a functional lead that can do that role within their function, right? If you're on the finance side, here's where this is, and here's where we're going to be fully integrated, and all these systems retired, and here's how we're going to get there, right? And then really, the role of the integration management person, the person that's running an integration, is to help synthesize all of those issues up in a way that the executives can understand, and that they can help them make decisions on what's important, what's not important, how should they trade these things off, right? Like, one of the things that we hear a lot is I had no idea that this decision was made, right? It was, it comes up later that this is a huge problem or it's an issue, and someone down in my team, I never, they never heard about it. No one else heard about it. So, we have to figure out what those are and do a better job of shining a light on them.
Yeah, it sounds like the big trend of the industry right now. Everyone's really trying to beef up their approach and integration and maximize the value of deals.
Yeah, I mean, it's the no question, and that's why it's taking up a ton of my time, and I appreciate it. It's good. I'm very excited to see where we are in a year, and how successful we've been.
What are other big lessons learned from going through this experience? Advice you give to the early Corp Dev function, getting ready to start year one off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it's more personal than anything else. I wish I had been more, outspoken and aggressive when I was younger and more junior, right? It was not in my demeanor. and now you're just, you get older, you don't care as much, you just get much more comfortable. And I wish I hadn't been as nervous, and I had been willing to, call more BS when I saw it. So yeah, people appreciate a point of view. I mean, don't be obnoxious and respectful with it. But yeah, I wish I had done more of that and gotten more comfortable with it earlier, so that's one kind of big personal thing that I try and instill on my team as well, right? You have to have a point of view. If you don't like what we're doing, tell us what the alternative is and why it makes sense, right? And a lot of times they don't have an answer for that, and so they need to have an answer for that. That's one piece, and then the other thing I would say is just be out there, be external. To me, that was the piece that kept it most exciting for me, was getting away from just kind of doing deals that people told me to do and getting out there, talking to companies, talking to investors, bringing that external point of view back inside the company, and be out there and talking and building your network, and having something useful to say, but being out there regularly.
Yeah, those are good tips, and they kind of go hand in hand with each other, because you go out there, you want to be proactive, vocalize it internally, try to stir up some new ideas and actions.
Yeah, exactly. I'd advocate for a point of view. That's the goal a lot of the time.
Hey, what's the craziest thing you've seen in M&A?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that we're in this quiet, sleepy corner of M&A. We don't have like the big, wild personalities. We don't have all sorts of crazy stuff going on. I mean, I think that the craziest thing that I've seen is not really that crazy, but it was the most surprising to me, is that we go into these things with a lot of transparency and openness, and a desire to get things done. All of our deals are negotiated. It's very rare that we're part of an auction. We're getting deals done that we work on together. And so it's kind of this journey you go through with the seller, and oftentimes it evolves over quarters or even years, right, of conversations and getting to know them and seeing them at trade shows and those sorts of things. And then just every once in a while you run across a bad apple that just exploits that, right, and will has engaged in ways that are if not quite nefarious, are certainly they were never serious about what they were doing, and kind of played us, right? And so building that cynicism and that skepticism is a lesson, right? And it's a bummer about the industry, but it's also, I get it, everyone's kind of doing what they're doing, so you just have to have some of that cynicism and skepticism around what's their angle really, are they serious about this, how are they playing me, am I playing them, what's going on? So maybe that's not that crazy, but that's one of the things that I've learned over the years.
It's like a nature thing. You kind of get a little two-face that comes up when you're doing these deals.
Yeah, I mean, you have to some extent. I mean, you have to be careful with it, right? I mean, we're going to work with these people for years, right? And often, I mean, there are multiple members of our CEO staff that came in through acquisitions, right? So, Autodesk is a place people stay. So, we take it very seriously. Maybe not everyone does. Yeah, I mean, the only thing you can tell yourself is, hey, those people that behave this way would never have been successful inside Autodesk. So it's good that the deal didn't happen, but it's sometimes it's a bummer, and you hate it if it blows back on. I can handle if it blows back on me, right? But the team and the like, right? If a deal blows up because someone wasn't actually acting in good faith.
Look for both their faces.
Yeah, exactly.
David, this has been great. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot. I appreciate you helping me become a better M&A scientist here. Those of you still with us. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, this is great. Thank you. It's these sorts of things are a lot of fun. So I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully folks had some sort of interest level. And if anyone has questions, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to talk further. I do see at least one name I recognize in the participants list there. Hi, Brad. How you doing? But anyway, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah. No, cheers. For those of you with us, here's to the deal. And until next time.